Hey everyone, Ryan here at etrailer. Today we're going to be checking out the line of Deka heat shrink style electrical butt connectors. Now these are available in a variety of different sizes. So you have the red, the blue, and the yellow. So small, medium, large if you will. And you can also pick these up in different amounts. You can get them individually as a 5-pack or even a 10-pack. With these heat shrink connectors, what they're going to allow you to do is pair two wires together, right, and make a complete circuit. And we'll show you how to do that a little bit later on with these. But these are my go-to. Whenever I need to make a connection like that, these are what I always grab, especially if the wiring is going to be outside or in harsher elements. And I say that because the ends of these heat shrinks will seal up and actually kind of wrap around the wire and help prevent moisture and stuff like that from getting inside of that connection and causing corrosion. So if you're looking for, the ultimate protection, so to speak, and help keep your wiring connections in good shape, then something like this is what I'd recommend. Now, with that said, there are more standard type butt connectors, like these ones here. All right, and these, when you crimp them down, they don't have that heat shrink on it, right? So the ends don't seal, and that'll leave little portions of the inside of the connector exposed, and that's what can happen. Corrosion and moisture and stuff can get in there and start to break it down and deteriorate. Now, that's not to say these don't have a time and a place, because they do. If I'm ever doing stuff on the inside of a vehicle or where I'm not really too concerned about, moisture and things like that, then by all means, these will do the job just fine. Now, what size butt connector you're going to need is just really going to depend on your application, right? So I talked about there being 3 different sizes. The yellow one's going to be the largest. That's going to be for 10 to 12 all-wire gauge type wiring. So relatively thick stuff. Something like this is where you would use the yellow connector there. So pretty thick wire. For the blue one, that's going to work with 14 to 16 gauge wiring. So something like this, right? More on the medium thickness side of things. And for the red one, it's going to be the smallest. It's going to be from 22 to 18 all wire gauge. And when you're dealing with wire, the higher the number, the thinner the wire is, right? So, for example, 18 gauge would be thicker than 22. Just figured I'd share that. So with these, pretty thin wire. That's what you're dealing with there. And sometimes if you're unsure what you got, a lot of times, if you look closely on the wire, they'll be labeled what it is. So this one says 20 AWG. So we know that's 20 gauge wire, and we need to use the red connectors to complete connections with this type. Now that you know how to determine what size connector that you're going to need, how many are you going to need, right? Now, a good rule of thumb that we always talk about is always get more than enough, right? Because, no matter how many times you count what connections you got and stuff, it never fails, right? You always need an extra one or something happens. And honestly, stuff like this anyway, if you do happen to have a few left over, they're not bad to have laying around. You'll probably find yourself needing them in the future for one reason or another. That's really about it with these. Ultimately, if you're doing wiring that's going to be exposed to the elements, no brainer. Use heat shrink style connectors. Will keep it protected and make the connection last longer. Now, everyone's going to use these for a variety of different reasons, right? They're super universal. Cars, trailers, all kinds of stuff, right? Today, we're using these to do some wiring on the trailer, make a repair, put a new end on it. And so why don't we go ahead, show you how we set ours up and give you a good idea on how to use these on your particular application. Very first thing that we need to do is take the wires that we're going to be working with and making our connections to and strip the ends of the insulation back. So about like that is what you're looking for. Maybe even a little bit shorter. but you then want to twist the wire nice and tight. That'll give us a good connection. And I'm just going to make that a little bit shorter there. And then you take your butt connector. In this case, we're going to be using a blue one for this size wiring. Slide that over the bare end of the wire. And what I try to do is make it to where when you put the connector on that bare end of that wire, that's where it stops, you know. That way all the wiring is inside of the metal connector there. I'll take a pair of crimps. Get this end crimped down. You can lightly pull on it if you want to. Make sure it's not just going to fall out of there, which it's good. Then we'll complete our connection here. I'm taking the other end of the wire that we're hooking this up to, putting it in there, and crimping it down. Going to do that same thing for our yellow wire here. Get that attached. And then for these brown wires, so in our case, we have one brown wire for our new trailer connector, right? But we have two brown wires for our trailer, and these are both tail light signals, and this is two. So what we're going to do, this is perfectly fine to do so, is just twist these two ends together, get them nice and tight, and then we're going to step up one size to a little bit larger butt connector, put that over both ends of the wire, crimp it down, and then since we're going to be putting one wire end on the other side, what I like to do when this happens is just strip the wire back a little long and then double it over. That'll help the butt connector get a little bit better of a bite onto it. Get that connection made. And now we're ready to shrink the ends down. And so in order to do that, I recommend using a heat gun. You apply heat to these, you know, kind of just consistently move it around, try not to keep it in one single spot for too long. So that's about as long as you need to keep that heat onto it right there. Once it shrinks down and stops shrinking, that's really all the heat that you need to apply to it. You don't just want to keep it on there and continue to warm it up if you don't have to. So I'm going to hit these other two and we should be good. Once you have all of your connections made, it's not a bad idea to actually test everything out to make sure that the connections are indeed good. So being that we're dealing with trailer wiring today, in our case, I just hooked up to a little test box, which is simulating a vehicle. I'll turn our lights on and make sure power goes to the back where they're mounted up. We'll check our taillights, our left turn, our right turn, and our brake lights. With everything working, we know the connection's good, and then if you want to, you can always come back with electrical tape too and tape these up for an additional layer of protection. But with that said, I think that'll about do it for our look at of the line of Deka heat shrink style butt connectors.